I've been there. Okay, I've had so little time to prepare this, but here we go. When you look at the theme, well, we heard this in the introduction, right? When you look at the theme, stories of not knowing when to say when, what you want is substance abuse, orgies, and I'm thinking maybe elaborate outdoor adventures that go awry, such that they become life-threatening. So basically, stories that maybe display some poor judgment on your part, but also sort of secretly reveal you to be kind of edgy and cool. I have 0 stories like this. In fact, I am the most quintessential when-sayer that probably was ever had. I say when way before there's any need to say when. It's not so much that, I don't stop drinking before the alcohol poisoning sets in. It's, I decline the invitation to the party. Literally, I had a friend who offered me heroin once. I declined. This week, a friend of mine suggested that I might enjoy putting on one of his 2 pink gorilla suits and riding a bicycle. I declined. Had I known about this gig, I might have made some different choices. That's what I'm saying. And this is not to say that I have no stories that fall into the category of not knowing when to say when. It's just that my stories are not sexy at all in this category. They are pathetic stories and kind of humiliating stories. But in the spirit of public service, which I thought was appropriate for the library, I will share this with you in hopes that you might use it as a cautionary tale, either for your own life or the life of someone you love. And this takes place 8 years ago, which I happen to know to the day, but in any case, at my job, I'm the person who gets all the resumes that come in, and this one day, in March of 2003, I got this significant envelope from somebody who was hoping we might have a job open as an English teacher, which we did not. We didn't have any jobs open at all, but we replied to all applicants. So I was looking through this packet of information, and in addition to the cover letter and resume, he had also included a bunch of evaluations from former students, and he had a sheaf of press about his recently published novel. And so I carefully looked through all of this information and fell in love with him. But I mean, let's be fair, this was unusual. First of all, I had all of the information I could require. It was like online dating, only one person had no idea what was going on. So I knew he lived about 10 blocks away from me. He was about my age. There were photographs of him on these numerous articles about his genius book. He's movie star handsome. There are quotes from the book. It's brilliant, of course. And then there's this cover letter. This cover letter that is unlike any cover letter you have ever seen attached to a resume. It is a thing of beauty. First of all, it's not on normal size paper. It's note paper. It's his personalized stationery, and it's got his name on it and his dark blue border, and he's written this brief and charming note. And it seemed to me to be the paper of someone who might also own cufflinks. And I work in the hate, and I'm willing to tell you right now that there has never been so much charm or style in one envelope in that neighborhood before or since. And I was besotted in 10 minutes. And I took this envelope into my friend's office across the hall, and I said, look at this guy. I want to write to him and say, I'm very sorry we have no jobs, but I'm pretty sure you should be dating me. And this is, and we laughed about it, and I went back to my office, and I'm still holding this thing, and I'm thinking, you know what, it turns out I'm not kidding. And I don't really know what to do, because this is a very sketchy, ethical scenario, right? That somebody applies for a job, and you say, we have no jobs, however, I am available. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of romantic comedies, which may not surprise you. And I also know that if I do nothing, then we have no plot. So I have to say something, and I decide to sort of straddle the line that might not get me fired if he complains, you know. So I sent him the usual reply, the thank you for your interest, and we have nothing, and we're sorry. And then I just add a bunch of stuff, which is congratulations on your success with your book, and welcome to the neighborhood. I'm sort of intimating I too live in the neighborhood. I'm going to buy your book at our local bookstore. And I tell him that I'm sorry to be so informal, but that I am under the influence of his stationery, and it has rather gone to my head. I did say this. I don't lie up here, ever. True. And so I hit send, and I'm thinking, like, this could really go either way. And he writes back to me quite quickly. And he's very grateful, and he's having this really impossible job search. And then I write back to him, and then he writes back to me. And by this fourth email, we have left the context of this job application, and now we're somewhere else. And I'm beside myself with giddiness, and I buy his book, of course, immediately, probably on my way home that day. I don't actually remember. I read it in 2 days. I loved it. I'm sort of his ideal reader. Every sentence is more delightful than the last. And now I'm infatuated 100-fold more. And so our correspondence continues, and after about a week, I ask him out, which seems pretty safe, considering. And he replies, "Yikes." And when you ask someone out and they reply by saying yikes, it sticks in your mind. I don't know what so yikes, no, in fact, it cannot be you. A, because he was 3 months behind schedule with his second novel, and he needed not to be distracted by dating. And B, because he was suffering from what he referred to as a debilitating social phobia. And this is, I'm just going to pause briefly because this is the public service part of our story. When somebody whom you've asked out replies and declines because they have a debilitating social phobia, the appropriate response is, "I'm terribly sorry to hear about your debilitating social phobia. I wish you well in seeking treatment. Farewell." What I say, and what I always say in the many, many situations that have been remarkably similar to this, surprisingly, is, "Oh, that's okay, I'll wait." So I said, "Oh, that's okay, I'll wait," and I did. And he did, in those early days, he did actually show up randomly at my office once upon a time. Because, I knew all the stuff about him, but he had no idea who he was writing to. He'd never seen me, he didn't have my resume or my photograph. So he showed up, we had a brief chat, and he disappeared again, and at this point he had established that he was actually attracted to me, so our correspondence took a sort of more overtly flirtatious tone. But we didn't go out at any point. So I continued to wait. This was March that this began. In July, I went on vacation. And I wrote him a letter while I was away, an actual letter. And this was quite strategic on my part because I thought, really, social phobia or not, nobody is immune to the romance of airmail envelopes from Paris. So I write him this letter and I say to him, here's the thing. You know that I am entirely infatuated with you, and if you truly are never going to see me, I need to stop this because it's killing me that you live down the street and you won't come out. And I mailed this letter and I got home and now it's August and he agrees. Amazing. So we're going to have a drink. This is earth-shaking news. We have a date, but we have not established either a time or place for this meeting. So the day rolls around, I'm very excited, and I suggest by email, it'd be better if we don't rely on our psychic powers to find each other in the neighborhood. We should probably get some more specifics. And I don't hear from him. And I don't hear from him, and I don't hear from him. All day I don't hear from him. And I'm getting increasingly furious because I think he's just blown me off, and I go into my friend's office and I'm ranting and raving, like even if his internet connection is not working, he knows where I work, he could call information, blah, blah, blah. At this point, for all I know, he's in the hospital, it's just disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. I can't be in my office because I'm going, refresh. So I go upstairs for a while. When I come back down, there is a message from him on my voicemail, and he is calling from the hospital, where he indeed is. And he tells me, I'm very sorry, I think I may have had a stroke. So again, another teaching moment. If somebody tells you they have a debilitating social phobia, and you insist that they go out with you, they might wake up that morning and have a stroke. And it might be your fault. I'm just saying, beware. As it turns out, he called me later that night and he was okay, and it turns out he had something called Bell's palsy, which I would have, everyone's like, Bell's palsy, my boyfriend had that too. But I would have thought he was making this up, seriously, except that my roommate in college also had Bell's palsy, and it is this completely random thing where she woke up and half of her face was paralyzed. And I don't know a lot about Bell's palsy, but I know that she was paralyzed and then she was okay. So I knew he'd be okay. And I also kind of cut him some slack, because who wants to go on a first date with a paralyzed face? So, fine. We continue to correspond. Now we're in September, and he is yet to reschedule this date. And I'm sending increasingly pitiful messages about this famous date, and I'm disgusting even to myself at this point. He does drop by again to show me his newly remobilized face. And it seemed to be working well, and then he left again. And he wouldn't, he just wouldn't reschedule this. At this point, he had 3 part-time jobs, and he's still writing this book, and he has lots of good reasons, whatever. Then he just stops replying to me. And I know at this point he's succumbed to terror, and it's over. And I'm heartbroken, basically, but I send him one last letter that's very high school-esque in its dramatic content, and I hope that for me, writing this ridiculous letter will create some kind of closure. But it turns out that it's just not sufficient, and I continue to think about him all the time, and I'm just so frustrated. And I finally, 2 months go by, and I decide I'm going to just go to his house, because I need him to look me in the face and tell me why he cannot just step up and deal with this. So I go to his house like a crazy stalker. I know. And he's not. I run into his roommate in the hall of his building, and she informs me that he has actually moved to South Carolina. Teaching moment. If you fall in love with somebody and they refuse to date you, and then they move across the country without telling you, it's probably not going to work out. And yet, I still held on to the dream. I could not stop thinking about this man. A year went by and I was dating somebody else, but I thought about him all the time, and I thought, this isn't fair to this man, this isn't fair to me, I need to have a conversation with this person. So I call him randomly. I've never called him at any point, and I'm calling him now. I don't even know where he is. He answers his cell phone, he's somewhere really noisy, he has to go outside. Who is it? I finally get him, he understands who I am. And I say, you broke my heart. And he says, I know I did, and I'm so sorry. And this was not what I expected. What I expected him to say is, are you insane? We saw each other for 8 minutes. But in fact, he seems really genuinely apologetic and also grateful to have an opportunity to apologize to me. And so I'm feeling pretty good, actually, because, as we pointed out, I am pathetic. And then he says, before this time in my life, what I would have done is gotten you into bed as fast as possible, slept with you, and then never spoken to you again. So, I actually regard this as my most successful relationship. And I'll tell you, I went through this potential conversation in my head a lot before I called him. And there were a lot of things I thought he might say, and that, frankly, wasn't one of them. So when I picked up the phone to make that call, I was pretty sure that one of us was the most pathetic person ever to have a romantic relationship. But it turned out I was right about that. And the mistake that I had made, and I didn't know this until he said that, was that it wasn't me. So, thank you very much.